Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fine.
All right, folks. Well, we got the CPI going on here. You bear with me a little bit. We had a bit of a power outage overnight, and I am still finding some things that I haven't turned on and gotten quite ready yet. Okay, now we got the sound going. I think we're all good. Let's go to the charts. So we got the treasuries yesterday. PPI led to a pretty decent rally in the treasuries. Overnight is pretty close, except for the last few hours was a little bit of a rise here. That's probably the London Open. S&P 500, pretty good rise here. S&P is kind of still on hold for Nvidia earnings, which I believe is tomorrow. I have to double check that. Oil has been kind of up and down. We're still waiting on Iranian retaliation against Israel. It hasn't happened yet, even though we keep getting reports that it's imminent. So that's what's going on over there. Gold and silver is kind of still where they were. Copper, not doing anything too interesting. Japanese yen. Well, the yen hasn't moved too much either, but the dollar has been down and is kind of reaching even some significant lows. So some important stuff going on over in the currencies. And Bitcoin back above 60K, but they've been playing with that all week. So that's what we got. Hold on, I'm still getting all these windows saying that they've had updates and hasn't opened them. Let's fix that. And we'll pull up our windows here. All right, so for CPI today, the consensus expectation for US core CPI month over month is the number that we're really going to want to pay attention to, as always. Spot 2%, which is what it normally should be. I actually expect it will be slightly less than that. Goldman Sachs estimates are 0.16. So it comes out probably to 0.2, but it might be a little bit lower than that when you look to the hundreds. Now the market at the moment thinks that the Federal Reserve already is kind of planning on cutting in September, and that a huge change in CPI is probably not going to change that. That is, unless we get a big surprise beat. Okay, if this number comes out higher than spot 2, then the market could react pretty strongly. But with all of the information that we have and the estimates and everything, I think that that's pretty unlikely. So we're likely to get a number that is in line or lower. I suppose that if it's substantially lower, like the PPI was yesterday, then we could get a big move. But otherwise, I expect the market to be mildly positive about the move. Now, over here in the treasuries, I don't know if it's a huge change. In fact, I kind of suspect that the treasuries are already maybe a little bit ahead of themselves in terms of overall pricing, because I don't know if you're really going to get 3 or 4 rate cuts rather than the one that's coming. But the equity market, on the other hand, it looks like it is in a very good position to start buying here. We are coming into a buyback window. We're going to see volatility contract here. So if the CPI is good, that's one major hurdle out of the way that could clear the way for equities to rally. All right. the CPI lie. Well, I don't think that CPI is lying. You know, they have a lot less room to kind of goal seek the CPI numbers compared to the jobs numbers. So another thing is that CPI estimates tend to be pretty accurate. Of course, when CPI is going crazy, then it's not. They miss it. But under normal circumstances, this is not a number. You know, like a big beat is, we're expecting spot 2, and a spot 1 would be like a big miss that would probably cause the market to rally. So, by the way, good morning, Octavius, Robert, Brad, Bill, D, Uzi, and Apol. So it looks like we got everybody here bright and early for the news, and we've got them coming in here in about 30 seconds. Well, I can tell you that I already don't like the way that the liquidity is set up over here in the micro 10-year. So I doubt I will take any major trades in the immediate aftermath, at least. But let's see. Okay, so there's already some people hitting. Before the news, it was a sell. That's a ballsy move. See how it works out for them. Well, and they're screwed. Okay, so core CPI is in line, spot 2 versus spot 2 expected. Ooh, well, I ain't messing with that one. I ain't messing with that one. You have fun, market. So let's see here. All of the numbers in line. There was like a really huge initial spike that was very quickly cut back down, and then we actually saw some excursion on the downside. So hitting it both ways, that was pretty wild. I haven't seen a piece of news that had flows both ways like that in a long time. Genis Tech, that's a new name. Welcome to the stream. Well, I am really not sure what to do with that. I would expect, well, okay, so based on the reaction functions, supposedly the S&P 500 should be up about spot 6% on the day after all of this. What are they at right now? Spot 2.2. So you probably get some room to buy the S&P 500. I don't know if here is a good spot, but hey, I don't know if you could get in the center of the volume profile at 5460. That's probably not a bad spot, but that seems like pretty risky because we are getting huge counterflows, and the treasuries over here are still selling. They are still selling. The dollar is really rising substantially. I'm wondering if there could be some information more deep in the report that is not really, reflected in those headline numbers. Because the market reaction here is a little bit off. Okay, so there was some pushback in the treasuries. That might be if I was really felt. Normally, if I had read into something about that said, oh, the flows here should be positive in the treasuries, that would probably be a good buy signal. But because I don't have that, I'm just going to have to sit and watch and see them fight it out. But there was some pushback from the 13.5 up to 15. Dollar drama. It does seem that the dollar is the dominant force here. The Japanese yen and gold and copper and Bitcoin and now the S&P 500 are all selling off. Well, here's the latest release. The Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers increased spot 2% on a seasonally adjusted basis after declining spot 1% in June. The index for all items less food and energy rose spot 2% in July after rising spot 1% the preceding month. Indexes which increased in July include shelter, motor vehicle insurance, household furnishings and operations, education, recreation, and personal care. The index for used cars, trucks, medical care, airline fares, and apparel were among those that decreased over the month. So those are all, I think, expected. But I'm already getting the hint here. Shelter spot 4. Maybe that's what it is. Because where is it? Like used cars and trucks down 2.3% month over month. Wow. New vehicles not down that much, but used cars down more than expected. Let's see here. Can I pull up, where is the note from Goldman here? Yes, used cars. Their forecast was negative 1.5%, and the actual was negative 2.3%. So then when we come over to shelter, where's shelter on this list? Owner's equivalent rent. They were predicting 0.29 and we got 0.4. So, I have not seen a CPI report quite like this one. This one is really interesting to me. So I kind of anticipated that we would be in line or lower. We were in line. When we were in line, I was expecting that we would probably see the market rally a small amount. What we saw was that the market did rally on the knee-jerk reaction, but that knee-jerk reaction was quickly washed out by selling, and the net change in cumulative delta, the orders here in the futures on the 10-year treasury, was a sell. So the market did not actually like the numbers that came out of the CPI. And why is that? Well, as far as I can tell, it's because the individual components did not quite come out the way that the market expected or wanted. In particular, the shelter component was higher than they anticipated, and the used cars component was lower than they expected, significantly lower than they expected. And so that actually kind of means that inflation in a majority of the parts of the economy was actually a little bit higher than what the market wanted. And that's not really reflected in the headline number. Probably why we're seeing the sell-off here. I'm not seeing anything on Twitter yet. People talking about it. But, well, the proof is in the pudding, isn't it? Okay, well, let's come in and do our notes now. Let's see here. Today is the 14th, right? Yeah, 14th. This was actually from the 12th because I did not take notes yesterday. Oops. Okay, so flows. CPI in line, but shelter spot 4. Okay. Let's check here. We got anything else today? Not really. NVIDIA earnings is tomorrow, right? Let's check that. Oh, that's not what we're looking for. Where is my rating calendar thing for this? Was it Market Chameleon that I was always using? Yeah. Well, there sure are a lot reporting today. The biggest Cisco. So does that mean that tomorrow? It is tomorrow? August 15th. Boo. Must be tomorrow. Oh. Wednesday, August 28th. NVIDIA earnings isn't until next week. So what was it that I was looking at tomorrow? Let's look at, let's see here. UBS, Cisco today, Walmart tomorrow. That's a pretty big deal. So I don't know if we really have a whole lot to work with. But let's come in here. Seems like market was disappointed in the crosstabs of CPI. Okay, they have recovered a lot of the downside though. Just now reading an article about Avon filing for bankruptcy? Really? Well, I guess that shouldn't surprise me because they have some pretty big competitors, I guess. These days, there's some upstarts kind of upsetting things over there. Wow. 61-year-old Brit gets 18-month sentence for chanting "Who the F is Allah?" Okay, things are getting crazy over there in the UK. Yeah, not seeing a whole lot out there. Well, let's see here. Mohammed A. El Arian, U.S. CPI inflation for July was in line with consensus forecasts. Specifically, both headline and core came in line. Annual core came down from 3.3% to 3.2%. Okay. Jason Furman. Core CPI inflation was moderate for the third straight month in a row in July at an annual rate. Moreover, the relatively little core inflation we've had in the last 3 months was more than entirely shelter. If you take shelter out, then the annual rates are a lot different. Am I going to read those? The BLS's narrowest core measure excludes food, energy, shelter, and also used cars, which have been falling in price. This measure is growing ever so slightly. So what should I make of that? The shelter component going up is bad, but we also know that the shelter component has lagged and maybe doesn't tell us a whole lot about the future. So, one, the Okay, so what I'm just hearing from my news squawk is that the market seems to be pairing their predictions for a 50 basis point cut is maybe part of what's going on here. So it looks like there's like a 60% chance of a 1 basis point cut and a 40% chance of a not a 1 basis, a 25 basis point cut and a 40% chance of a 50 basis point cut. So that might be some selling. But I'm kind of thinking here just off of the main report. Like if I say, okay, is inflation higher or lower than expected? And is the future of inflation higher or lower than expected? It kind of seems like, well, shelter's higher, so maybe it's actually worse than we expected. But then you kind of have to discount that. And when you take that one out, it's lower. So this is maybe a little bit of a mixed bag. In particular, how the flows will react to that is extremely uncertain to me. So I don't think that I want to put a bet on this CPI. Octavius is going short. Well, we did kind of see a little flip there in something, didn't we? That's actually a really, really good catch. I mean, you got the 1-2 ticks at the very least, right? Republicans, this is like the first thing that I see on Reddit this morning, is Republicans want to eliminate the Department of Education so that private schools can pick and choose which students to accept, leaving out, quote, degenerate students. I don't think that that is necessarily the Republican goal, but yeah, I think a lot of Republicans would be happy with that. Like, one of the things that people think is ruining the schools is degenerate students that don't actually want to learn. And so if you can get a school environment where they don't have those kids, they think that our students would learn better. Maybe. But I think that what this guy is insinuating is that it's racism. Interesting that that's the first thing that I see when I pop into Reddit. I'm right on? Thanks. Being a little finicky here at 18. You shouldn't have told me that you went. You shouldn't have told us, Octavius. You should have kept it to ourselves. Now the market's on to you. Shouldn't say things like that. It's a mess. Donald Trump at risk of losing Florida, poll suggests. But it's a Newsweek story. I might as well read it. Not because I think Newsweek is a reputable source, but because I think that Newsweek is an influential source. USA Today Suffolk University survey conducted between August 7th and August 11th reveals that Florida may not be an easy win. For Trump, the former president leads his opponent only 5 points. Only 5 points. With 47% to Vice President Kamala Harris's 42% in the poll. Its current lead is smaller than the polls have shown since July 10 and also within the survey's margin of error, plus or minus 4.4%. Yes, but what was he leading at this time in 2020? I think that it's probably like the similar numbers to what it is right now. We got abortion and legal weed on the ballot down here this year. Very real. Well, now that's actually is a very astute observation that I was not aware of. It's that if you have abortion and weed on the ballot, that probably will increase Democrat turnout. And I mean, if Republicans lose Florida, then they're just hosed, right? But on the other side of it, Trump has kind of seemed partial to weed legalization, and Trump's coalition seems kind of partial to weed, wants to see weed legalized. But the abortion one probably hurts more, right? The abortion one probably hurts more. While we probably have more Republicans registered than Democrats, we have a lot more than both in independents. Oh, wow. I tell you what, that came back down to the 16. Real nice. Real nice. Well, you know, when I look at the information that we're getting right now, you know, it's going to be an interesting election season because normally the election season doesn't really get into full swing until after Labor Day. And that is still true. And I think that Donald Trump is kind of functioning under those assumptions. But at the same time, a lot has happened over the summer. A lot has happened in August. And on top of that, the early voting was a really big factor in 2020. So, you know, the whole October surprise thing is probably turning into September surprise, right? Like everything kind of gets moved forward a little bit. So does that mean that the polls that we're getting now are more important than they used to be? Hard to say, but there's maybe an argument to be made there. But then if you actually go into the polling that we're getting right now, the big thing that I'm seeing is I do not see evidence that like independents are moving towards Kamala Harris. What I'm seeing is that Democrat enthusiasm was extremely low, and that's was weighing on them in all of the polls, and Kamala Harris erases that. So I don't see the rise in the polls and all of that to necessarily be confidence in Kamala Harris or liking Kamala Harris as much as it is Democrat enthusiasm, the propensity for Democrat voters to get out and vote on election day is increasing. And the problem with that is that this has kind of always been the problem with these polls. That is, the weak point in polling is getting accurate turnout estimates. So you ask them questions about, like, how enthusiastic they are to vote and things like that, and they use that to kind of determine how the turnout will actually be. But for the last 2 elections, those kind of predictions have all been kind of off. Even in 2020, despite Donald Trump losing, those turnout numbers were a little bit off. And quite notably, in the midterms in 2022, those numbers were also very much off, although the other way around. Democrat turnout and youth vote turnout was much higher than anticipated, and a large factor in that may have been the abortion issue. Right? So I think that we are getting important data right now, but it's not data that we can really truly understand to make conclusions from, Yeah. I saw a data set the other day measuring the amount of polls done in the weeks before, during, and after Harris was anointed. And there was a noticeable spike in the weeks she was anointed. Like, they basically anointed Harris and immediately doubled the polling they were doing, in some cases tripled. Really? I would like to see that. That kind of sounds like a source worth saving. You know what? I'm kind of getting into this spot where, like, anytime that I see any kind of news story that I think is significant but that is maybe going to be forgotten, I need to save it. So the thing that kind of happened this week that really got me thinking about this was the whole, did Kamala Harris use AI to make her pictures of her rallies look better? And so when this first came up, I was like, oh yeah, she had, because I've seen a bunch of different images that were very clearly AI manipulated. But I wasn't, when I first kind of when that first came to my attention, and when we spoke about it on stream even, I was not really thinking about the main picture that has caused controversy. So then, Donald Trump tweeted it, and so that one kind of came to the front. And that one, for some reason, it was really hard to track down the original image. But a day later, the media kind of did some footwork and was able to get the original image from the Harris campaign and all of that. And what I see now that I'm able to look at the actual image is that I do not see any photo manipulation in it. And I think that Republicans that were claiming that it was AI enhanced were showing cropped images that were not really reflective of what the photo actually looked like. That's not to say that they were that like their close-ups manipulated things, but the close-up made it so that you couldn't really see the field of view and the scale of the picture, and so it kind of made it look like there were no reflections in the airplane when there really were. It's just that the crowd was way further back than you expected from the when you only saw the little cropped in thing. But like I said, I saw a bunch of other images that were like clearly photo manipulated, and so like when I was going back, I was only able to find one of them. I have one that I am certain is photo manipulated, but I don't know where it came from. I don't think it actually came from the Harris campaign. I think that it might have been trolls posting it. But so now I'm like, oh, okay. Whenever I see that sort of a thing where it's like, there might be something to this, but I'm not entirely sure, you need to save it, because tends to become important later on. And then because of the way that Google works and everything, it's like I have a really hard time finding them again. You know? So this one that Uzi's talking about here, that's, well, okay, so you got a good image there. Can you give me like the news story that came from though? I would much rather save the link. TLA Trader says bond buying. Well, it looks like, oh, you didn't get it from a news story, unfortunately. Okay, so let's just save this image. Let us save it in the politics. So let's see here. Work newts politics. Whole frequency. Make a new tab over here. Let's just make a new one. Full frequency.jpg. After Harris became nominee, frequency of polling increased substantially. $1.15 to $12, half might be okay. Well, we're not anywhere close to that yet. It looks like that we are developing a little bit of a liquidity hole, but that the edges of it aren't very clear yet because they seem to be able to freely move between 16 and 18 very, very easily. So, you know, Octavius, he took a short at 18 and it did fall all the way down to 16, but then it came back up really quickly as well. So that's kind of like this range. So if I was going to be long, I still like Octavius's trade. Not that I have a good handle on whether the flows will be long or short, but he clearly got a good spot because it's the top end of that range, right? If I was going to be long, I would want to be more close to 16. But I think that this is a situation where our ability to predict the flows is very limited because it was really like information in the crosstabs and differences in like expectation, like pricing. You know, is it going to be a 25 basis point cut versus a 50 basis point cut? That is the difference here. And so it's really hard for me to sort out which if they're going to recover this or what. It wasn't rampant enough for me to think it was some fluke. Yeah, because it could just be that they're doing more polling right now as we get into the end of the summer. You know, we don't have any way to conclusively tie it to Harris. Previous polls conducted from July 15th showed that Trump had a lead between 6 and 10 points in Florida, according to 538. Okay. Well, but again, the movement in the polls that you're seeing is likely down more to enthusiasm. I am a little bit skeptical that I'm still very skeptical that Harris can maintain the momentum. It's probably still likely that she peaks in polling here. Because a part of it is going to be people will get more familiar with Harris and decide that they don't like her. part of it will be that you've got all of this Democrat enthusiasm, but once the Democrats realize, or rather, I should say, to me, it's like a foregone conclusion, but once they realize that even with all of that, it's not going to be enough to win the presidency, then you're going to see Democrat enthusiasm just collapse. The extreme astroturfing of the Harris campaign ain't never going to get me demoralized enough to not vote, but it is making me think more and more that she's going to win because astroturfing works on idiots. Well, but like that's the thing that I'm saying though, Uzi. I don't think that the astroturfing is like moving people. Which is to say, I don't think that there are independents out there that were like, well, I didn't like Biden, so I was just going to hold my nose and vote for Trump. But now that Kamala Harris is there, I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris instead of Donald Trump. I really don't think anybody's saying that. The number of people that are saying that, very, very, very small percentage of voters. And there's probably going to be just as many voters that are like, well, I could kind of hold my nose for Joe Biden, but Kamala Harris is a communist and I'm not going to vote for her, right? No, it's what it is it's the dyed-in-the-wool Democrats that, you know, are kind of socialists, communists anyways. Absolutely love seeing somebody that far left put on the ticket. And so it's going to show like really high enthusiasm. But I don't, basically, I think that, basically I'm saying that I think that the polls overweight enthusiasm right now. Right? And the astroturfing affects the enthusiasm the most. That's what I'm saying. Because when you go on Reddit, I give you an example. There's this subreddit that I don't know why Reddit shows it to me so much, but it shows it to me so much, and it's called Decoding the Gurus, which I think is a podcast. And having never watched the podcast, but just kind of reading between the lines of like the type of stuff that's posted on that subreddit and what people say, it's kind of like a we don't like conservative influencers subreddit. Because they say that like Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro are like these gurus, and they use the term guru in a very derisive way, and they're very much like focused on the like that they're taking advantage of their audience and that sort of a thing. Which Jordan Peterson, I see where people kind of make that argument. But Ben Shapiro, I just don't see it, right? But it's going to be focused all on right-wing influencers because a key component of their guru is opposing the establishment. So, like, by that very nature, they're all going to be Republicans, right? Okay, but anyways, there was this thread about it, and one of them was these guys really don't like Lex Friedman for some reason. Like Lex Friedman is like public enemy number one on that subreddit for some reason. Which to me is so bizarre. Like, he just interviews people. Okay, whatever. He does post stuff on Twitter. He does post opinions. And one of the things that he posted yesterday was, I don't think that this election is going to lead to fascism or communism. Okay. And they were very incensed by that because they all think that Donald Trump is a fascist, which is ridiculous. He's not. And you really look at the people that are like real experts in fascism, he's not. Okay. At least if you look at the political philosophy as it was explained by fascists, he's not. Okay. But I digress. They didn't know. Why would people be saying that Kamala Harris is going to is communist? They didn't know. Why is that? I'll tell you. Because her father was a communist economist. Or not a communist, a Marxist. Who was basically, he did study in Marxist economics, essentially. So, does that mean that Kamala Harris is a communist? Nah, not really. I'm going to bet that she doesn't consider herself a communist, but I'm not a mind reader. We would never be able to know for sure if she was like secretly a communist or not. Right? She is about as far left as you can possibly be in the United States, or at least as far left as you can openly be in the United States. Okay, but her father was basically wrote Marxist economic papers and books and stuff. So they didn't know that. They didn't know that. Right? They're kind of living in this bubble. And the problem is that like when September comes along, it will become harder and harder to continue living in that bubble. Like Republicans haven't really gone after her dad and that background yet. But they will. And then everybody will know. Harris seems to be running against the administration. Oh, no, Uzi, this is like my favorite subject in the current political land space. Because it's Schrodinger's Harris is what it is, right? Because if she runs against the current administration, then it undermines all of her current experience and success. But if she accepts this current administration, she has to accept all of the failures of this administration that was extremely unpopular. And so she plays this game where she was or wasn't a part of the administration based on what is politically expedient for her at the time. And I call it Schrodinger's Harris. Totally a thing. Seems like more often than not, though, it's like I wasn't actually a part of this administration, right? I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. Oh, well, why didn't you do it now? Well, they never actually ask her, but I'm sure that if they did ask her, she would probably, her excuse she would either completely deflect, or her excuse would be, well, I'm only vice president and there's only so much we can do, and we need a stronger Democrat Congress and that sort of thing, right? Have you ever heard of this guy, Dr. Shiva? He seems to have some fight with Harris concerning removing him from the ballot. That doesn't make any sense, because if this is the guy that I'm thinking about, that was like in Massachusetts or something, like not Massachusetts, but like somewhere up northeast, not where Kamala Harris lives. So I don't know what that's about. Shiva Durai? Nah, that must be a new name. I'm not familiar. Going back to the astroturfing thing, something that really bothers me this time around is how absent the other side of the argument is on Reddit in particular. Like, you go to Advice Animals, they're posting Democrat propaganda all day, every day now. It's just that the sub has gotten completely political. And I think that it's a lot of it is bots and stuff, but where are the conservatives in the bottom of controversial pushing against it? I don't see them. Not in the way that I used to. Conservatives have really abandoned the website, I think. Or at least posting outside of their subreddits. Hunter Biden sought U.S. assistance for a potentially lucrative Burisma project in Italy while his father was vice president. Stories that wouldn't have been written if Biden were the nominee. No, it would have been written, but it would have been buried a lot harder, right? Stories like that still gonna hurt Democrats right now, I think. I mean, the whole thing is that Kamala Harris's campaign strategy, they're calling it the Mean Girl strategy, right? The whole strategy is to appear cool. So anything that news story that comes out that is damaging to the Democrat Party, to Joe Biden, and makes them look potentially less cool, like really hurts her campaign, right? Like it's like the Kamala Harris campaign kind of missed what actually happened in the movie Mean Girls, because the whole thing was that by the end of the movie, Regina George was not popular anymore. As soon as everybody kind of realized that they all hated her, she lost her popularity literally overnight, right? And I think that you could see the same thing happen to Kamala Harris. I bet you, like, actually, you know what, though? I think you're right. Like, maybe you would see that story, but it wouldn't be published by the New York Times. No way that the New York Times would have published that. If Biden was still the nominee, I think you might be right. Source there makes a big difference, right? And see, so here's this thread where they're complaining about that Republicans are voting for somebody that tried to what is it that he said? Tempted an insurrection, and like you're hardly seeing any Republicans oppose. And the ones that do are like negative 30. Because you believe lies, negative 30. Liberals are in a weird cult. They can't see beyond their own propaganda, negative 39. AstroTurfing, I think. When I look at, especially, well, okay, this was 10 hours ago, so that might not be the case. But oftentimes, you'll see a thread like this. Somebody will post something like that, and like within 10, 20 minutes, they're already down dozens of votes. Like once you're in the controversial tab, like nobody reads that shit. So who keeps downvoting it, right? That's one of the things that makes me go, AstroTurfing, organized downvoting. Like there's basically politically engaged people that are going down into those spots and making sure that they downvote those people extra good, so that they're discouraged from continuing to post. Or they do what they do at the interesting as fuck subreddit, where if you've ever participated in any conservative subreddit ever, that then as soon as you try and participate in their subreddit, they ban you. That's another thing that's going on. Well, it has been a good 45 minutes now since the CPI news, and we are still rotating between 16 and 18 in the 10-year Treasury. And everything else is kind of evened out as well. The only thing that really is moving at the moment is gold. Gold maybe kind of hinting that they want to go for more lows. Kind of mirroring ZB a little bit, but more so. But as of yet, they haven't gone for it. Genesis Tech is up today. You know, I'm finding this action a little bit tough. Like, there's no way that I would have messed with the initial move. And nor would I have thought to have taken a short. And then it's just been like this tiny range. Meh. I still think that we should be good to buy in the S&P 500. Like, I don't know if it's like you take a trade right now that you're going to make money over the course of the day. But I do think that we will be higher a month from now than we are at the moment. Let's not say a month. Let's say like 2 weeks from now. I think we'll be higher 2 weeks from now than we are. You know, barring any kind of like huge disaster like a thermonuclear war or something like that. But the buyback window opening back up alone should probably give the S&P 500 a good boost. They're ready for it. No, another thing that I should note in the political world, they came very close to replacing Ilhan Omar as the Democrat nominee in Minnesota, but they failed. So she is still going to be in there. I saw that for like an hour and a half. The polls closed, nothing was counted, and then in a half hour they counted like 5%, and then 10 minutes after that they finished counting. Well, that's interesting, but that's probably just a reflection of the counting system. That like when they say X%, it means like how many of the districts have reported in or something like that. So it would make sense to me that they all finish counting at the same time. Versus other systems where, you know, it would take that county, you know, all day to finish, and so you get like a percentage of how much they're done, and it's confusing. I'm super bothered by the whole we don't have the result on election night. Like, we're getting more modern systems, and yet it takes longer to count the votes. I get why it works that way, but I don't think it should work that way. I mean, it's basically Somalia voting for a Somali. Well, I mean, they have a pretty big voting bloc there, but it's not the whole populace, right? They actually came very close to replacing her. And I don't know. Maybe it's better for Republicans that she's in there. You know, you need to have that fodder. When you get somebody like that even the Democrat Party kind of really wants to get rid of her, that's kind of like maybe it's better for you that she stays. The ZN kind of ticking down there, like, you want to go for it, but nobody's biting at 16.5 yet. Did you take? No. In fact, with the way that this is going, I don't anticipate myself taking any trades. I got a really good trade yesterday. You know, what I got yesterday could keep me satisfied for the week. You know, like during summer action and everything. It's not a bad take. And I anticipate September to be full of lots of opportunities. You know, so basically what we get is the next thing that happens is Jackson Hole. There's Jackson Hole, and there is a Federal Reserve meeting at the beginning of September, and Labor Day, and then we're into the thick of the election season. And, you know, end of September, beginning of October, before early voting begins, is probably when the parties start dumping all of their opposition research, the October surprises and so forth. And then, you know, you could start to see some big swings in the markets, because the markets definitely seem to have an opinion about, you know, what that the difference between the two candidates would have significant differences for the markets. Can Kamala Harris turn Texas blue? I tell you what, some of these sad lines that I'm reading this morning are really... I'm telling you, it's all about trying to manipulate people's enthusiasm. And one of the big things that manipulates people's enthusiasm is their confidence in whether or not their candidate will win. Those with a mortgage rate below 3% say their likelihood of moving in the next 3 years would soar from about 17% to 28% if they could keep their current loan, per recent surveys from the New York Fed. Heck yeah. If I could keep my loan, I would totally upgrade. Here's that subreddit again. Hold on, let's roll my back here. Well, now that the 10-year backed off of that 16.5-ish area, now it's really, really in a deep rut. Like, you're in a window where you would often see a little bit of movement, and you're not even seeing that sort of stuff. Or like the open of the S&P 500. Variety says that J.K. Rowling and Elon Musk are being sued by the boxer Humane Khalif at this point. Humane needs to prove that sex, either male, female, or trans. Yeah, I don't. You know what? Wouldn't discovery in an instance like that be genetic testing to prove that he does or does not have, or she does or does not have a Y chromosome? That sounds like one that doesn't actually go to trial. that they pull before it goes to discovery. Or that it does go to discovery and then they regret it. I kind of wish that when you guys told me about your trades that you would post a little bit more about what you're thinking behind it is. Because to me, like, I'm just like, I see you taking a trade there and I'm a little bit like I'm trying to hold my twitching, like it's not going anywhere. So why do you want to take a trade in that area? What is it that we think we know about the future flows here? I don't understand. Looks like they're now going to test the other side. No. The hole is just at 18.5. Okay. Well, I'm seeing a pretty decent amount of buying in the S&P 500 on the open here. Riedel Srivastava. Did I say that right? I think maybe I said it right. But welcome to the stream. Okay, uptick. That was a pretty good bid following that too. Did the yield curve change there? No. Overall today flattened though. with a delta dropping as low as it has and no progress down, I'd be worried about short. Oh, you talking about in the treasuries? You might be right. We may, you might be right. We may actually get the trapped shorts kind of situation now. Like the ones where we've kind of seen this in the past, that the deltas weren't clear enough to suggest that that was the situation. But now we are getting that. If the treasuries are able to reach above 20, the 20 half-ish area, then you've got you basically have all of the volume from the session underwater. Well, that might be right. I don't know. D is saying I think that they're just splashing on the other side. That probably is true to some extent. But look, they ticked up here 19.5. Now we're getting a 3,000 iceberg, and probably 3,000 iceberg on the other side declare it. And then we'll see how much bids there. But then you're to the cost basis. Then you're to the buyer cost basis. Basically, they're splashing on an area that, where you could start to see short covering really start to pick up. So I'm not seeing super clear buying in ZN yet. It's a little bit for them to take it from the 18 to the 19.5, but it hasn't been long enough and consistent enough for me to say that there's some sort of a persistent buy coming through. But this could be a situation where positioning could just take over and there's shorts that have to cover. That could be ugly. At the same time, it could just stay within this range. That's a pretty likely scenario, too. Feeling a little sleepy today. The room is warmer than usual because the power went out last night. And the AC wasn't on, and so it's a little bit warmer in here than I would like. Actually, I should check the thermostat, make sure that it's... What does it do? It seems to be okay. It was just this room. Still seeing some big orders going there. but the delta flipped back around. It's like the shorts are doubling down on it now. Oh, what 19F has been used like a cheap trick? Well, I'm not seeing a strong bid at 20 yet. But it's not looking good for the shorts. Let's put it that way. There's a little bit of a flip. See if that holds. Okay, uptick doesn't hold. The uptick doesn't hold. I'm back and forth here. Yeah. Still kind of rising. The delta's coming back here. Oof. Okay. I think there was a little bit of short covering there. Yeah. Uzi's gritting his teeth. I didn't quite like how that played out in the micros, but that's probably because there are retail traders getting caught off sites there. Took the loss, okay. So they are now above the buyer's cost basis, but the cumulative delta in the 10-year treasury has not really recovered. It has in the 30-year. The 30-year has almost completely retraced it. And we should note that the yield curve is overall flattening. So that might be why we're seeing that in ZB. Or in other words, ZB is kind of leading the way. Actually, maybe not. I don't know. It kind of looks to me like on that move that ZF led the way, even though I see ZB as the one with the delta. So, I don't know. So next point is the open. Followed by 26. And I don't see any big orders on the offer, by the way, either. So, once we get over the open, you kind of enter into no man's land a little bit. This is the area that was very thinly traded. And if you come back into the volume profile, very thinly traded and is like well beyond past pivots and so forth. So that kind of turns it into unclear if they can maintain it, or if they do get through it, that turns into like a real trend. But again, with the amount of traders that we have underwater in ZN, I think it could happen. Well, S&P 500 all of a sudden turning a little bearish. This might be something else. So something I'm just kind of now realizing that I maybe, and I'm not saying that this is what's happening, but retaliation from Iran is still on the table, and we have seen some risk-off moves in the past week off of that. So another thing that I'm noticing. Okay. Well, so there was a large bid there at 23. When they ticked down, it disappeared. But there was a large, not large bid, a large offer at 23. But I'm noticing that the liquidity is now 4,000 per contract. Yesterday, we definitely weren't at 4,000. So it does appear to me that the liquidity is getting thicker as we move up. And that is something that can be really indicative of a strong trend. Not Iran ain't gonna do shit. Well, I kind of agree with you. I mean, like, they're gonna do something, but they're not gonna do anything significant, right? So it'll be like the market will have kind of like a little bit of a move when it happens, and then everybody will chill out and realize this doesn't matter. They seem to have tried to gather a bunch of Iranians, and then suddenly they weren't gathering anymore, and it was wait more. As if they genuinely, well, I honestly, so I think there's two things going on with that one. Number one is that Iran is at a huge disadvantage against Israel. And Israel has done a number of things to Iran to kind of give Iran the message that, like, our technology advantage over you is so high. You really are not safe if you try and start shit with us, right? So that's the first thing. But then the other thing is that Iran actually has a new president. He's a relatively new president. And this president is pushing the, like, let's be more moderate and try and repair things and stuff like that. So my understanding is that the new president is lobbying extremely hard to, have a response that is very measured. So I still expect Iran to do something, but what they're going, it's probably going to be like more token airstrikes that don't accomplish anything, right? They might take a lot of money, both sides, probably Israel spends more money on it than them. But I don't think that they actually do anything like, there's this concern that like it spreads into a wider conflict. It really seems to me like that's not going to happen. But you never know. If it turns into a wider conflict, don't quote me on that one, right? That's not particularly my area of expertise. That's just the information that I have. Okay, they still haven't cleared the open. It is really slowed down since they kind of came to that area. They are able to take it bid. Nobody hitting 24 yet, but I'm sure it'll happen. And we are starting to see that rise in cumulative delta. There you go. And how many canceled? Yeah, not that many yet. Looks like they lost the 23 half. Well, I would say that there's still about 15K net cumulative delta in ZN to come out, but that's not like crazy, right? So posted in Discord why you took the trade. I don't see that. Which channel are you talking about? I'm seeing the buyers still there, but those offers aren't jumping out of the way. Okay, they jumped out of the way at 23 half. But it didn't hold. Market makers are being a little bit flaky there on that one. Not entirely sure what to make of that. What am I seeing? Well, I'm seeing that the yen recovered the sell. It is kind of moderating right now. The dollar. So we may be seeing currencies start to be, well, the move in the dollar is actually kind of a wild ride because the dollar rose a lot initially, but overall it is now down. Yeah, now they're really doing the liquidity whole thing a little bit there at 23. The 5 years kind of trying to drag them. S&P 500 was selling a little bit, but that seems to have moderated as well. Okay, step back up to 24. A lot more hitting it that time in the 24 pulls. Oh, but they don't take it. they're able to get that bid to stack up decently enough. It's still super flaky, but they are getting over 2,000s, right? And they are getting the offer to pull. It's just like it hasn't ticked yet. Okay, there it ticks through it. So they were able to get through with only 1,500 contracts too, which is favorable to us, I guess you could say. But it's not holding, so it ain't over yet. It ain't over yet. Okay, now 38 or 41. See, that can either be, kind of a little bit disappointing or really good. Because if you've got really strong offer side liquidity there, but the trend is able to just continue pushing through it, then that means that you've got a really solid trend. And we are in a situation where we could have a really solid trend developing. But I mean, that much liquidity is hard to push through. It's very difficult to keep that up. And I am kind of seeing this thing where like right here at 24.5, they're able to get a little bit of a bid at 24.5, but there's certainly some robots willing to sell it, right? So even if we are going to get that strong trend up, like it looks like it's going to give it a bit of a fight. Also, I'm also kind of detecting a hint of the 10-year lagging a little bit compared to the others. It looks like the 5-year is still leading on the move up, but I'm still seeing much more significant and clear buying cumulative delta in the 30-year than I am in the 10-year. Also should note that we're kind of into that no man's land a little bit, like I was talking about. So that doesn't give us as many benchmarks. Kind of figure out where we're at or what's going on. Yes, showing some weakness again. So there's like a hint of weakness in the S&P 500, but when I look at Bitcoin, there's really some weakness over there. So I think that's worth noting. I'm starting to detect the hint of stacking at 25.5. Okay, there's an iceberg in front of it. They cleared it. Strong bid on the uptick. Orders hitting 25.5 almost right away, but only 54 so far. Pulls. 24 to 31 to take it, which is about normal. And then it doesn't hold. So there is some like liquidity rolling out in front of us, but that liquidity is like jumping out of the way for the most part. And now you're actually kind of seeing the stacking at 25. Okay, 36. I mean, it seems like that the buyers can handle the 5Ks, but okay, by the way, we have washed out the selling now from the news. Cumulative delta is now net positive across the board in the treasuries. I'm still getting kind of like trendy DOM action here, right? Bids are stacking, offers are pulling. Yeah, it takes a decent amount of volume for them to clear the offers despite the pulling, but they've been able to find the buy orders so far. So I'm still kind of getting some trending kind of action, but I am also concerned about the amount of liquidity that is there on the offer, that it will be a tough road. The cost basis was 113.21. So I was kind of paying attention to that, and I kind of like the way that it kind of played out the way that I thought it would, because I thought when we were back here, I thought, oh, they're going to clear the cost basis, and then once they get through the cost basis, you're going to start seeing short covering. And that is what you saw, was once they see down here, it was like no big deal, but once they crossed that number, then you started seeing the cumulative delta switch long. So that's a really interesting way in which that has played out. So now that I'm to 20 ticks, I'm thinking about yeah, they're kind of negotiating with us there. I'll take that one. I'm kind of thinking at the moment that the liquidity is a little bit too much, and that they're probably going to have to take a little bit of a break before they could continue this trend higher. Also, I also think that based on the initial trade, so I'm a little bit iffy on this, on whether that was the right place to take profits or not. I probably could have waited and gotten a few ticks better, but the original premise for the trade was based a lot more on that there was a lot of people underwater, that they didn't like the news, so they sold it. But then it's like that's not big enough of a deal. You're not getting more off of that. So some of these orders that went short, they're going to have to cover if it comes back above that cost basis. So that was the trade. It was a bit more of a technical trade. It did play out. It did happen. So it happened. The trade's over, right? Well, I'm still getting signs of it trending. I am still getting trendy signs. So I could justify holding on to it, but I'm seeing enough to make me think that this was a fine place to get out. So it's right now, I could get back in because 813 was where I got out. So we did get some bars down. I am seeing the dollar kind of flip a little bit here. It's a good predatory. Yeah. Oh yeah. That is kind of what I like about it. Is I kind of like a trade where, if I was a big guy, me getting into it really screws somebody else up and kind of benefits my position. Tactically, I think that's the way to go. Like, I prefer to take a trade where I'm hitting into it with a market order, right? Although, as of late, I think that almost all of my trades on the micros here have been with limit orders. Haven't really been seeing those situations in the micros where it really made sense for me to hit into them. So, it's funny because I didn't think that I was going to take a trade, but I did, and I'm pretty happy with it. I do wish that it was 20 instead of 17, but that's okay. That's okay. You might see some sellers in the European index until the close. Yeah, might be right. Like, we might be in one of those situations where it's hard for the E-mini to really do anything too interesting until after the London close. So far, this session in the S&P 500 seems unusually tight, given what the news was and everything. So, and well, that's not the case in the treasuries. The treasuries, okay, the news was really conflicted and frankly maybe even confusing flows. At least I think we understand what happened, but the flows on their own were a little bit confusing. And the recovery here, the reversal and recovery has been pretty interesting to watch, I'd say. So very different from ES. Like, I've talked about this many times, but the way that I see it is this. I'm looking to ride large meta orders. I'm front running block traders. So anytime that I see a really consistent trend in cumulative delta that I could have predicted, I want to be in a trade. So here in this situation, yeah, good trade. Good trade. I saw it kind of forming. I got in around in here when it started breaking out. Got it from here to here. That's a good trade. That's a great trade. This one right here, this change in cumulative delta, yes, it was moving. Cumulative delta was moving down, but price was random. So, but if I see, strong trend in cumulative delta and price following it, I want to have made money from that. I want to predict those. Worked well today. Will it continue? Because it looks like there's maybe 3. So there was my 20, right? There was my 20. They're kind of reaching. They're kind of reaching for a little bit further, so it might happen. If they keep going, that will actually make this all the more interesting, because I really do think that around this 26, they kind of hit a spot where they kind of needed to take a little bit of a break. So if that's all the break that you get is like 5 bars, and then they're going to continue the trend, then wow, we really got something going here. I wonder, by the way, what all of this action possibly means for the people betting on 50 basis point cut. Well, on Zero Hedge, that Hunter Biden asked State Department to aid Burisma deal while father was VP story is at the top. I'm kind of thinking that because that story is coming from the New York Times, it seems a little suspicious. Like, I think that's going to become a thing. It's like, why didn't you publish it earlier? Yada, yada, yada. But I digress. Germany issues first arrest warrant in Nord Stream sabotage investigation. Oh? Wow. Okay, I'm not going to read this story, but here's the story on Zero Hedge. One step away from the biggest oil shock in history. A similar move today could see oil prices above $300 a barrel. That seems a little fantastical. See if this Zero Hedge story about CPI has anything that I didn't catch, though. 3-month and 6-month annualized CPI rates continue to trend lower, with energy a particularly volatile factor. This is the 50th straight month of month-over-month increases in core CPI and a record high. Money supply growth is re-accelerating. Is this the trough for CPI? As Bloomberg notes, while the pace of inflation has come down, it is still growing, and consumers in the Newark, New Jersey, Pennsylvania metro, and the Dallas area are still dealing with inflation in excess of 4%, the highest among large metro areas in the U.S. Will the Fed really cut rates as rent inflation inflects higher for the first time since 2023? Yes. Hey, there's 27.5. I should have held it. Oh. So I think I'm taking the opposite stance on my exit that I was yesterday. Yesterday it was, okay, this is kind of my stop area. Let's see if I'm reading the flow. This looks like an area where it could potentially stop, or if they extend through it and come back to it. And my read on that was pretty good. But my take on this one is that I think that I let a little tiny, 2-tick pushback scare me out of something that was still very clearly trending up. So I think that I would probably rather still be in the trade on this one. And by the way, you got another whole basis point there in the micros awfully quickly on that one too. But I think that's because the ZB is just pushing so hard. ZB is only 3 ticks away from its highs. So I'm really skeptical about ZN being able to breach the high from the news, but there may be some trend left in this yet. Maybe we could see 3.8 or lower. I think I would rather still be in it. But if I was in it, I think that I would need to be eyeing this really carefully for an exit, because it has slowed down. The flows have moderated. There's even some signs of the order flow kind of flipping back down short. I mean, if it does flip back down short, then I guess the price that I got would have been really good, but oh wow, they gave that up real quick. Maybe I should have held it, but I wouldn't have been able to get more from it. Maybe it's not that bad. Or maybe I'm just splitting hairs. Well, the person that Germany wants to arrest over the Nord Stream pipeline thing is a Ukrainian. Just saying. Ooh, look at that. Back to my price, huh? Maybe my exit wasn't so bad. Well, now that we got a good trade, I don't necessarily like to keep going, right? Like, especially it's 8:15, like the chances of me taking another trade are low. Who knows though? I think it would be really interesting if we were to sell and come back to the buyer's cost basis at 21.5. If this move was solely just short covering, then a return back to the buyer's cost basis in the end seems to make sense. But let's see what happens. I don't think I have a trade. Of course, it could just keep trending and this turns into like a mind bender of a trend update. No, I don't think I'm seeing that though. It was a good trend, but it wasn't that good of a trend. The Times report draws on newly released government records pertaining to Hunter's pushing of a Burisma deal in Italy. The Biden White House has resisted releasing the files for years, only to relent soon after Biden was pressured into abandoning his re-election bid. Oh, that's interesting. GOP Oversight Committee says less than a week after Joe Biden dropped out of the presidential race, the State Department finally released records showing Hunter Biden sought U.S. government help to land a Burisma deal when his father was vice president. Coincidence? Uh-huh. That is actually really interesting. Can't do anything to Biden either. No, I think you can. Well, first of all, he was vice president at the time. Does that matter? I don't know if that matters. Maybe it doesn't matter. But second of all, well, maybe it's a good test case. Because are you saying that because of executive privilege, we can't prosecute him for that? You can certainly try. I don't know how the Supreme Court would rule on that. That's kind of the spot where they kind of were vague, intentionally vague, because they don't know. And that's a question to yet be answered by the court. But I don't think that they will pursue it. Right? That's why I think they're okay with dropping it. It could be. I could certainly see the Biden administration overreading what the Supreme Court decision actually said, because they've been saying, oh, it means the president can do anything. And then saying, okay, so we can release it. Totally. I can totally see that. But the key thing here is that the ruling was that the president cannot be prosecuted for crimes for executing his office, essentially. So, like, you can't say, oh, the president signed this executive order, we're going to prosecute him for signing this executive order. You can't do that, right? That's essentially what they were saying. I mean, that's the main gist of the ruling. And they didn't explicitly say anything about what was or what wasn't. They just ruled on what is the does the president have executive privilege? Yes, he does. He has executive privilege for executing his office. So now there's this argument about what qualifies as official actions and what doesn't. What actually does fit under that executive privilege? Unclear. Hasn't been ruled. Democrats are, to try and scare everybody and get people to vote for them, are like pushing this narrative that makes the case like much bigger than it actually was. Because they say that means that the president can do anything, but it doesn't, because they haven't actually defined what the umbrella. They've said there's an umbrella, but they haven't said like what does the umbrella cover, right? So Hunter Biden asking the U.S. embassy in Italy to help Burisma, does that fit under that umbrella? Well, asking it's Hunter for starters. It's Hunter, so it's not Joe Biden. Yeah, this is kind of a problem. But at the same time, is asking the embassy in Italy to help Burisma, is that a crime? I kind of think no. I think that it's a piece of information that you don't want in the public. It's going to make you look really bad. But I don't know if you can actually prosecute people off of that. Right? Although it could lead to a deeper investigation that could reveal prosecutable crimes. And again, especially if it's for Hunter specifically, he was not president. He doesn't get immunity. Now, if you trace it back to Joe Biden, now does he get immunity? Well, again, it depends on whether the actions that he took fit under the purview of official actions, essentially. Because not everything is an official action, right? Like, just as a clean example to make it more clear to you, if you're president and then you go out in the middle of the night and kill a homeless man, you are not shielded by executive privilege. Because going out into the middle of the street at night and killing homeless people is not in the Constitution as a part of the office of president. Okay? The judge that threw the case out because he was too senile. No, that wasn't the judge that threw it out. Wasn't that the FBI essentially declined to prosecute because they thought he was too senile? He was VP, not president. Well, I do think that the vice president is considered part of the executive branch, so he might not have quite the same protections as the president, but I think that he does have some protections. See, so the argument that they made, which was like, okay, so can you order the military to kill your political opponents, and that's covered under executive privilege? Well, ordering the military to do something, that is under the purview of the president's office. So there's an argument to be made that would be covered. But there's also an argument that the military says that they should not follow illegal orders. And if that order was illegal, there's a case to be made that it could still be prosecuted. But that's one where we don't know. Like it would have to be tried, essentially. People are making the assumption that it means that you could do that, but it hasn't been tried. Yeah, you'd still have to prove Biden himself had anything to do with it. You can't change Joe for Hunter trying to sling on his name. That's where plausible deniability comes into play for Joe. You're right. Because really what this is about is this is a very damaging negative story that would have really hurt Joe Biden's political campaign. Not necessarily that it would have led to prison, right? They ready to go again? They're coming back up there, but it's kind of like fizzling out a little bit early. Yeah, you're right. And that it is the New York Times in particular. So, but it seems, though, that what happened was there was records. They were keeping them from the public. And now that Joe Biden is not running anymore, now they're making it available. But then I kind of ask, why would Joe Biden not running anymore all of a sudden make it so that those people holding it back are like, okay, now we can throw Hunter under the bus, right? Wouldn't those people want to continue to hold Hunter? But then I guess what I'm saying here is I kind of feel like that this gives fuel to the theory that Joe Biden was kind of ousted rather than went willingly. You know what I mean? Like, if the people that are in charge of those things right now are not loyal to Biden or whatever, then that would maybe explain why they're releasing it. Eerie silence. ZB is still looking like it's pushing. They could extend the highs here. It's possible. It's possible. I'm not going to take a bet on it, but certainly is like the possibility that I'm kind of keeping an eye on, the exciting possibility. I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't want you guys to all catch blue balls watching it, but and there's a lot more on that story. I wonder if I go to like patriots.when. I shouldn't even give that type because a lot of websites like block it. I do want this because some people were saying, no, that's not true. They were just to give the IRS more money, but I think it was like had something to do with them actually tracking tips. But let's see here. It looks like the romance is over. No, that's the Germany arrest warrant thing. Chameleon. I cast a deciding vote to sick 87,000 IRS agents on tip workers. Presses that out. No tax on tips. Yeah. Oh boy. Oh boy. That was loud. In 100 years, we've gone from teaching Latin and Greek in high school to teaching remedial English in college. I wish that they still taught Latin and Greek in high school. I wish that I had learned that stuff in high school. Oh well, whatever. So I'm not, there's not a pinned one about it. Minnesota grandma jailed for defying Tim Walz's lockdown orders, issues warning to American people you do not want tyranny at this level. Maybe if I go to Rising. The thing that I keep noticing about Tim Walz that I think is a really big problem for them is the number of people, or let's say the propensity for people in his past to be willing to come out and speak very forcefully against him. Like, you've got a ton of people. Everybody wants to take a shot at Donald Trump. But, like, the ones that have really stuck their neck out have kind of been, like, a little, you know, like, you notice that the media doesn't trot those people out too often. All right? I'm not saying that they're lying, per se, but they maybe have some credibility or image problems. Okay? But that's not the case with Walz. With Walz, you've got a lot of people that are extremely sympathetic to the public, that are very reputable to the public, like the people that took over the National Guard unit after Tim Walz left. And they're all willing to just absolutely, completely trash him. And when you have an individual like that can go on TV over and over and over and over again, if we have a debate, those people are gonna be there seated in the audience at the debate. Those sorts of things, that can be a real problem for the campaign. And I'm seeing this with Tim Walz more than I've ever seen with politics in the past. Ukrainian citizen named Volodymyr Z. Oh, no, it's not Zelensky. No, it's somebody else, but it is curious. I am still of the opinion that that Biden basically ordered it in some form. They may not have, it may have been Ukrainians that actually carried it out, but I think that Joe Biden said do it. I really do. Of course, the story that we had was that it was the US, so like, and I believe that story, so I'm sure we'll find out several years from now that they were just straight up lying about it. Okay, well, the story about the about Hunter has not hit the Trump forums yet. Nor am I really seeing this is a new one. Yeah, CNN poll analyst source cold water on Harris campaign enthusiasm. Didn't I already watch this? CNN doesn't want to show it to me because they say ad blocker. Oh well, whatever. So I think we're going to need to wait a little bit, see how people react to that headline and see what people say. But I kind of sense that that's something that conservatives will be extremely interested in. Wait, what? I haven't seen this. Utah woman gets plea deal after pulling teen's skirt down in a viral TikTok video? I've not seen that. My goodness. Dude, when I hear Utah and TikTok together in the same headline, I'm immediately like, oh no, please no, please no. Like the thing that's going on right now, there's this group of people that like they were all kind of like TikTok influencers and they do dances and stuff like that. And then there was this huge scandal because everybody found out that they were all swingers. And because they were kind of like representing Utah culture and even Mormon culture, even though they weren't like active practicing Mormons, but they were kind of riding that train in a way, right? And then there was that scandal, and I was kind of like, well, thank goodness, because I want them to go away. But they're not going away, and now they've got like a show. They've got some sort of a reality show that's coming up. It's like the Mormon Housewives of Utah County or something like that, right? Please go away. And it's just crazy people that somehow became popular on TikTok from shaking their butt. Hate it. That's not what I want to represent my state. But whatever, people are going to think bad things about my state no matter what anyway, so this is... Utah. No. It's Utah. Right? It's Utah. Because we never say the T. It's not a mountain, it's a mountain. That is the Utah regional accent. Drop your T's. Do I enunciate my T's enough? Well, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to start doing it. It's Florida. Oh, man. One of the things that always drove me crazy was the people that were really anal about your pronunciation of Missouri. Misery. When we were in Oklahoma, my wife was like, "Oh, let's just move to Oklahoma and live closer to my parents." And I'm like, "Well, I mean, I'm kind of neutral on your parents. I don't think that I would move just to be closer to them, but I wouldn't be opposed to being closer to them. But I don't want to live in Oklahoma. Like, I don't want to live in the Midwest. I hate the Midwest weather. I hate the humidity. I hate the bugs. I hate the winters, although apparently Oklahoma winters aren't nearly as bad as Kansas winters. At least that's what they were telling me. And Missouri in particular is really a nasty place. It's a different state. Like, people, I tell you what, people in Utah probably really surprised when they go out and live in other parts of the country, because like the houses in Utah are actually really nice. Almost everybody has air conditioning, that sort of a thing. It is not like that everywhere in the country. And there are some other parts, you know, like parts of New York and LA and stuff that are like really super nice. And whoa, I didn't know that there was that many people that live like this. Okay, well, the treasuries came back up to that high, but they didn't do anything. They're backing off a little bit. I'm still seeing the cumulative delta become a little bit less clear and trendy. So I do think that the trend up is probably over. Who wants to live in misery? Yeah, I don't know. I really don't think that anybody sits there and says, you know what would be a nice place to live? Missouri. I would really like to move to Missouri. Or really that whole area. Kansas, Missouri, maybe Oklahoma. Okay, there's sorry, what is this place called in Oklahoma? There's some nice things about it. Like if you want to live out in the country and everything, there's some advantages to that. You know, like you lived in the South and you want to still kind of have the things that you liked about the South without it being like so insanely hot in the summer. You know, a little bit more moderate weather. Oklahoma sounds, you know, North Texas, Oklahoma, okay place to live. but even then, I think that most of the people that are moving there because of jobs and so forth, and not necessarily because they think it's going to be a great place to live. But on that token, if you were looking for a nice place to live, it probably has more to do with the weather. Why wouldn't you be moving to California, Arizona, Utah? And if you're okay with cold, then maybe Wyoming, Montana, Idaho. Why would you move into the Midwest? Because the humidity sucks. Am I wrong? Do you disagree? Or you don't care? Maybe you just don't care. Utah's a nice place to live, though. Generally speaking, I would say. I have not enjoyed this summer, though. This summer has basically been like, it's impossible to do anything, man. We gotten a brief break this week because it rained yesterday. Ooh, ouch. They just took 2 ticks at a time right there. 6K orders smashing into it. I desire a cold life. I wish to move to Washington State, but their politics is very upsetting. Ooh. Yeah, Idaho. I don't know. You know what though? I don't understand the what is the word? I don't see what is attractive about like Washington, like Seattle area. Because it's just cold and wet all the time. I don't want to be wet all the time. I guess it's the water. I'm accustomed to the desert, and I just don't want to be in a place where there's lots of water. Except for like when there's water in the desert. That's cool. Vancouver, yeah, that's probably true. I might agree with you on that one. Vancouver is way better than Washington. It may not have always been that case, but I think that Vancouver right now is probably nicer than Washington, because of Seattle's kind of like gone way downhill. Of course, Vancouver is kind of on the downtrend. Beautiful landscape, fish and life, beautiful ocean, misty winds constantly blowing across your face, bringing us... that just sounds cold and miserable to me. It's just like... I guess probably what it is that in the summer, it's reasonable. And like, you're inside all winter anyway, so it doesn't matter when it's super bad in the winter, I guess. I feel like if you want like fish and wildlife and stuff, well, maybe not fish because you don't have the ocean, but like Montana. Come on. I want to live in some place, let's call it 1 hour plus away from Seattle or any city. I will 100% only go to a small town, not a city. I don't know if I could survive in the city. Yeah, I really do not understand the mentality of people that want to live in the city center right now. Manhattan, okay. LA, if you're really good looking and you're looking to start an acting career. But otherwise, I really do not see the benefit of being in the inner city. And yet that's where all of the millennials went. All of the millennials wanted to be in the city centers. It just doesn't appeal to me, and it appeals less and less to me as a kid. The older I get, the more that I'm like, I wish that I had a little bit more land so that I could build this or I could build that. Like I wish that I was in a position where, I have a whim that, hey, it would be really nice if I had a greenhouse, so let's just go and build it in the backyard. I wish I could do that. I don't have that much. our generation is obsessed with being somewhere that smells like sour milk, urine, and weed. I don't. Like, okay, so like if you're in the city center, there'd be some good restaurants, but it's pricey. And you can go to clubs. But like clubs suck nowadays anyways. So like I still don't see the draw. The only draw that I see is you work downtown and you want your commute to be really short. Otherwise, I don't understand it. City life is like, dang, I got too much money and I need to burn something. It wasn't always like that, but yes, nowadays it definitely is. That's one of the things that really, really triggers me when I'm reading on Reddit, is these people that come in and they're like, how am I supposed to live? Don't live in Manhattan, duh. If you're in the finance industry and you're a top finance professional, or in the tech industry and you're making the big bucks in Silicon Valley, okay, then okay, go and live in those places. That's who those people are for, and that's why the cost of those places are up so high. But if you're just like working a regular career, or not even like a college degree type of career, like an engineer, lawyer, etc., you shouldn't be living in those places. You can't afford it. Get used to a long commute. Stop complaining and saying that we all need to move completely, rearrange the economy and bring socialism in because you're too stupid to realize that you can't afford the place you live. Let's see here. My buddy moved from Florida to New York City, and how he can make having to drive to do laundry because the $4K a month closets that they rent up there sound good blows my mind. Whoa, really? I lived in Miami and I had a blast. There sounds like there's some places down there like I kind of feel like that Miami is kind of already like used and has the problem, unless you're working for a hedge fund. Hey, you know what? I think it would be a difficult thing to convince my wife's ex to move, and convince my wife, because she just doesn't want to move in general. But if a hedge fund paid me the right amount, maybe we could make Miami happen. I could maybe go. My sister-in-law, she's my sister-in-law now. That was fairly recent. She's from Miami and she liked it. But there's some other areas around there. Well, I don't know if they're like super close, but like Boca Raton and those sorts of places. They sound fun. Mad cognitive dissonance required for city dwellers. Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole thing is that they don't seem to realize why it's so expensive there. They just kind of accept it as a fact of life. And they don't see how Democrat policies have led to life in the city being the way that it is. And where those problems have come from. Like the one that really throws me for a loop is the rent controls and everything in New York. Like there are a ton of apartments in New York that are just like trashed and just sit empty because the rents and all of the other regulations that they've put in there basically give them no incentive to fix it up and put it back on the market. And so like the amount of available housing is declining in New York. And yet they all still think that rent control is a great idea. Like, how can you be that stupid? But what it comes down to is, okay, so here's my pet peeve for the day, actually. Liberals believe that being informed means that you're getting information from the right location. That's what they really think being informed is. They think, well, you watch Fox News and I watch CNN, and CNN is a better news source than Fox News because Fox News is just propaganda, and ergo, I am more informed. That's what they think being informed is. Whereas a Republican thinks that being informed is having a command of all of the facts surrounding an issue. Like, to me, knowing that there are people online creating fake images and trying to pass them off as that they came from the campaign when they really weren't, that to me is a part of being informed. The liberals say, well, that you shouldn't even be telling people about that. We don't talk about that on TV. It's information, it's correct information. I want to know it. And the issue that you run into with that is that they think that they're informed just because they watched something on TV. And they don't realize that, to really be informed on politics, you have to live and breathe it, right? Like, it is these people, like myself, that all we do is read political blogs all day. I used to spend my whole day on Politico before they kind of went downhill and became a leftist rag, but I digress. I spend a lot of time reading about politics. I spend a lot of time reading about the markets. I read basically every kind of analyst report from the industry, like the professionals that I can get my hand on. I would read those all day if I had access to it, right? And that's how I get as informed as I am. It takes like real serious effort. And there's all these morons out there that think that they're informed because they watched a news report. It just absolutely bothers me. It bothers me so much. And then I go on Reddit, and all of these people, they think, oh yes, I watched MSNBC last night, and I am much more informed than those Republican degenerates. And they haven't heard any of the, they don't know anything about Kamala Harris, her past positions and her history and her who her father was and all of that stuff. They don't know anything. It's super annoying to me. And that's how you get these people that are like, hey, rent controls are really great. It's because they never looked into it at anything beyond what they saw on the news to see that basically all of the economic research on this subject says that it's a bad idea. Octavius is still talking about Miami. You would need SPF 1000 for your head. No, I bet you it's way worse here, because the thing that kills you here in Utah is you're 10,000 feet up. So 10,000 feet of air makes a huge difference in how much the sun is gonna get you. In Miami, yeah, you need to put the sunscreen on, but you put the sunscreen on and you can go out and enjoy the sun. Okay. In Utah, if you have to be out all day, like I went to the air show, for instance, it's going to have to be long pants, long sleeves, a hat, sunglasses, and slather yourself in sunscreen. Make sure that you have a bottle. Like, you have to, it's like you need real gear to be able to survive it, because there's nothing, it's just direct sun rays, man. There's not a whole lot of air absorbing it above you. And so you don't have to be out for very long at all. Oh yeah. And like when the sunscreen says like reapply every 4 hours, you really have to do it every 4 hours. Did you hear Kamala's camp is changing news headlines? Yeah. So the story that I read about that was that the Kamala Harris campaign was paying for advertisements on news websites that were then masquerading as headlines to kind of give the headlines that they wanted. I don't think that changing news headlines is the best description of that, but you know what I mean. They are manipulating ad platforms. That's concerning to me. But it just shows you this is what the Kamala Harris campaign is all about. It is all about perceptions and appearing to be popular and trying to manipulate people's opinions, because she really can't run on policy. Because number one, she doesn't have a policy platform right now. And number two, whatever her policy platform ends up being, it's going to completely contradict the policies that she's supported in the past. So she wants to talk about policy as little as possible. And it looks like they're willing to play any game. I thought that they were doing AI. It looks like that's probably not happening, at least not yet, or at least not detectable yet. But are they playing games to try and make her appear more popular? AstroTurfing, it absolutely is happening. Is it going to lead to her winning? I still believe not. But I'm very biased. That seems to be what the data is saying to me. That data is extremely likely to change. You'll notice, by the way, I was saying in September last time around that I thought Donald Trump was going to lose, didn't I? It was around September when I started to go like, there's something that Donald Trump needs to do to be able to stand a chance at winning this election, and he doesn't want to do it. He can't get over the we need to open the economy back up thing. He needs to come in and treat it like a serious issue, even though he thinks it's over, but there's still people that are scared about it, and you have to show that you're serious about it. And he never did, and that's why he lost, I think. But earlier on than that, I can be like super wrong. So we're not to the point where we have a good handle on who's going to win yet. All right, guys, I want to keep yapping about that, but it's time for me to get going. This is a good 2 days. Two larger than average wins in a row is pretty good, and both of those could have actually been $30. So I could have made a basically essentially a third trade. That's pretty good. And I think we still would like to get one good one here in August. At least another good $20 in August to pay for, data and all of that. But feeling pretty good about it. So that's cool. But I don't know. We'll see what the rest of the month brings. We're still kind of in the dead of the summer, so CPI might be the most interesting action that we have for a bit. I will see you guys tomorrow, though. In the meantime, stay excellent, team.